New drug to treat impotence that may soon hit the market. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Bergamo in for Elliot Rodriguez.
And I'm Alita Haytain in for Jennifer Gould. CBS 4 News at noon is next.
Two TV legends back-to-back. Dick Van Dyke in Diagnosis Murder, followed by James Garner's return to television on Chicago Hope. It is thrilling. A Night of Legends, CBS Thursday.
With only 3 episodes left, Cos is fighting the Battle of the Bulge.
It's too late for me. I want you all to just save yourself.
All new full hour of Cosby, CBS Friday.
Last night, we told you about a group of terrorists who torched this scientist's office over her research on plants. Tonight, the spokesman for the group, who says he's willing to go to jail over what science may be putting in your food. An Eye on America special series continues on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Harm and Mac have nerves.
Now, live, this is CBS 4 News at noon.
Good afternoon, everyone. We want to take you live right now to Little Havana for some late-breaking news.
Taking place, and that meeting should take place before any further action is initiated by the INS. I can't hear you anyway. And Lazaro is also requesting that it is imperative that this meeting take place before any further action is taken on the part of the INS or the Department of Justice. And finally, I'd like to announce that Lazaro is willing to accept the invitation of the Attorney General and Commissioner Meisner and is prepared to travel to Washington tomorrow to meet with both of them. Thank you. Can I try to do this in Spanish?
All right, as you just saw, that was a meeting with the lawyer for the family, Manny Diaz, making some comments right now. But right now, a meeting between Miami Mayor Joe Carollo and Miami-Dade Mayor Alex Pinellas is set to take place in about an hour.
All this while Elian's Miami relatives take a reluctant step toward returning the boy to his father. We've got live team coverage from South Florida to Washington, D.C., and that's where we begin with CBS 4's Ted Scouten.
Well, Alita, today Attorney General Janet Reno is expected to deliver a letter to the South Florida family telling them exactly how and when to turn the child over for the reunification with his father. Now, this morning we understand she spoke with psychiatrists and psychologists who are talking about how all this is going to take place, kind of hammering out the final details with them. But before that letter is delivered, the Attorney General is going to meet with Miami Mayor Joe Carollo and Miami-Dade Mayor Alex Pinellas. We also expect the great-uncle Delfin Gonzalez to come here to the Justice Department to meet with the Attorney General. As the clock ticks on Elian's return to his father, the final scramble is on to come up with a plan for reunification. Delfin Gonzalez is set to meet with Janet Reno. Miami Mayor Joe Carollo left Miami this morning bound for Washington. Miami-Dade Mayor Alex Pinellas headed to the nation's capital too, all ready to meet with Janet Reno. She says on the table is discussion of reunification, not delays.
One of the main requests that we're going to be making to her is for her to intercede so the families can meet by themselves without interference, without pressure from anyone.
Two psychiatrists and a psychologist who met with Lazaro Gonzalez are meeting with Reno as well. They will come up with a plan to reunite Elian with his dad. No time has been set yet for the actual exchange, but it will likely be later this week, possibly in Florida or here in Washington, D.C. Mayor Pinellas hopes that the final details will be hammered out by the family.
Let the families sit face to face and let them decide what's in the best interest of the boy without TV cameras, without bureaucrats, without lawyers, without politicians. Let them sit down and decide what's in the best interest of the child.
Meanwhile, Juan Miguel Gonzalez, his wife, and their son spent the morning meeting with Cuban officials at the interest section. They're likely talking about the impending reunification. Now, as you heard from that news conference in Little Havana just moments ago, Lázaro González, Elian's great uncle and his custodian, is now considering traveling up here to Washington to also meet with Janet Reno and Doris Meisner, the commissioner of the INS. But as far as we are hearing right now, it is possible and expected that today the South Florida family will get a letter telling them how and when this reunification is going to take place. We'll definitely stay on top of all of it for you. We're live in Washington. I'm Ted Scouten, CBS 4 News.
And now from Washington, D.C. to the waiting game in Little Havana.
CBS 4's Ileana Varela has more on the growing number of protesters who are holding out hope outside the home of Ilean's relatives.
Yeah, and more importantly, Jim, there's been a lot of developments just within the last couple of minutes. You saw at the top of the newscast Manny Diaz, one of the attorneys for Lázaro González, announcing live that Lázaro will be traveling to Washington tomorrow to meet with Attorney General Janet Reno and with the INS Commissioner Doris Meisner. However, he is still making it very clear that there must be at some point a meeting between Juan Miguel González and his family here. And in fact, we were given a copy of a letter that has been faxed to Dr. Paulina Kernberg. She's the head of the team of doctors, psychiatrists who met with Lázaro González yesterday. Lázaro has faxed her this letter, basically trying to get her to commit to somehow arranging this meeting between him, Maris Lacies, and Juan Miguel González. He is making a few points that I want to point out to you. He first of all says, we are writing to ask that no further ultimatums be issued before the family can meet. He is also proposing that this meeting be held at the home of Sister Jean O'Loughlin, which is of course the place where the grandmothers met with Elian. However, he says he will also meet Juan Miguel at any other neutral place in South Florida or elsewhere in Florida if necessary. And he says that concerning that meeting, Elian would be there and would meet immediately after that meeting. Elian would meet with his father, but only if he is guaranteed that after that meeting he would be allowed to come back to his family here in Miami. Otherwise, the child might be too afraid to attend that meeting. Let's go to part of the interview with Manny Diaz just a few minutes ago. Let's listen to him.
It is imperative that the family get together and talk about the situation and talk about what's happened in the last four and a half months. It is imperative that at that meeting it be strictly family, that there be no government intervention from either government, that there be no lawyers present, and no media present. Strictly a family matter.
So a lot of developments here within the past few minutes, but the situation remains the same. Elian is here, his father is in Washington, and there's still no agreement as to when or where the two will meet.
The government's hand-picked mental health experts are back in Washington today, having left Miami empty-handed. After a one-hour meeting with Lázaro González, there is still no agreement as to how Elian will be handed over to his father.
Everything that they've done to date would lead you to think that they won't do this voluntarily.
Without a mutually agreed-on plan for a transfer of custody, the stage is set for a showdown. The Justice Department is expected to issue a demand letter telling Lázaro González when and where to turn over the child. And they're talking about it happening before the end of the week. And once the transfer occurs, Juan Miguel González is free to take Elian back to Cuba as soon as he wants. And that's why Lázaro González's attorneys are scrambling today, asking a family court judge to issue an emergency order barring Elian's removal from the U.S. until a custody hearing is held, and they can present evidence as to why they believe Elian's best interest is to stay here.
The one thing that has never been considered is the best interest of Elian González. And state courts are traditionally have the wisdom and expertise and the tools.
Last night, thousands of Cuban Americans again hit the streets near Elian's home to show their support. But with their legal options dwindling and the power of the federal government against them, the community is beginning to resign itself to the inevitable.
People would be very sad in this community, very upset. Our duty then is to make sure that they express themselves, but that it doesn't go violent in any way. A lot of demonstrations have taken place without any violence here, and we hope that we can continue that approach.
Meantime, the waiting game continues, and of course the big announcement here is that Lázaro González will be traveling to Washington tomorrow to meet with Janet Reno himself. For now, live in Little Havana, Ileana Varela, CBS 4 News.
All right, thank you. One person noticeably absent at Ilian's Little Havana home has been his cousin and surrogate mother, Mary Slaces. She remains hospitalized for what the Gonzalez family describes only as emotional anxiety. It seems this has happened several times before. The Miami Herald reporting that the 21-year-old has been hospitalized for stress 8 times since Ilian was rescued at sea Thanksgiving Day.
While the wheels continue to churn in Washington, D.C. in the fight for Elian, South Florida is preparing for yet another vigil. There is a mass scheduled for Elian's mother and stepfather tonight at La Ermita de la Caridad in Coconut Grove. Both died trying to reach the U.S. back in November. The vigil is for 8 o'clock this evening. Everyone is being asked to take a white flower and a candle to the ceremony. And be sure to stay with CBS 4 News for any developments in the Elian Gonzalez case. We will continue to bring you the very latest as it happens.
The South Florida families pleased to find their missing son have been answered, but with the worst possible